I found him dying in a crater on a battlefield that was supposed to be empty. That was my first mistake. Not finding him, stopping. My name is Queen Seraphel of the Ethon Empire. I command 12 star systems, 200 warships, and the most decorated military force in the known galaxy. I have walked through battlefields before. I have seen the aftermath of wars that lasted longer than most civilizations exist. I have learned, through experience that cost me more than I will describe here, that stopping on a battlefield for a single soldier is how queens get killed. I stopped anyway. He was human. That was the first thing I registered. Humans were rare in this sector. Their expansion into the outer corridors had only begun 40 years ago, and most of their military operations stayed closer to their own territory. What one was doing alone in the wreckage of the Dravon contested zone I did not know. What I did know was that he was alive. Barely. The kind of alive that is 1 degree from its opposite and moving in the wrong direction. I had 3 of my personal guard with me. Commander Voss, who had protected me for 11 years and whose opinion of my decisions I could read precisely from the angle of her shoulders, put her shoulders at approximately 45 degrees of disapproval when I crouched down beside him. "Empress," she said. Her voice had the specific flatness she used when she wanted to object and had calculated that objecting would not change anything. "He is alive," I said. "He is human," she said. "We do not know his mission, his allegiance, or how he came to be here. The Dravon zone has been contested for 6 years. Any number of factions could have placed him. He has a wound in his side that has been bleeding for at least 4 hours," I said. "If he was placed here, he was placed very badly." "Empress, get the field kit." Voss got the field kit. Her shoulders remained at 45 degrees. I turned him over carefully. He was younger than I had estimated from a distance, mid-20s by human standards, which I understood was considered early career for their species. He had dark hair matted with dried blood on one side and the specific quality of unconsciousness that comes from blood loss rather than injury to the head. His hands, even unconscious, were positioned near his weapons, not reaching for them, just near them, the instinct of a soldier who had trained the habit so deeply it continued without thought. His eyes opened when I put pressure on the wound. They were an unusual color, dark with something lighter at the center, the kind of eyes that seem to be processing more than they are revealing. They found my face with more focus than someone in his condition had any right to possess. "You should," he started. His voice was rough from dehydration and pain. "Be quiet," I said. "You are losing blood." "I know," he said. "I've been—" He stopped, recalculated, started again. "I've been aware of that." "Then stop talking and let me address it." He looked at me for a moment with those eyes that were taking in more than they were showing. Then he looked at Voss and the 2 other guards positioned behind me. Then he looked back at me. "You're—" He stopped again. "Bleeding out and in no position to have opinions about who is helping you," I said. "Yes, be quiet." Something crossed his face that I would later come to recognize as his specific version of finding something funny in circumstances that did not traditionally support humor. He closed his eyes and was quiet. His name was Captain Darren Cole. I learned this from the identification tag at his collar when I was stabilizing the wound. Human military designation, Outer Corridor Special Operations. The unit number on his tag corresponded to a division I had encountered in intelligence reports. A small, highly capable team that operated in contested zones doing work that larger forces could not do without creating political incidents. He had been separated from his unit during an engagement 3 days earlier. He had been surviving alone in the Dravon wreckage since then. 3 days, alone, with a wound that should have stopped him on the first day. I finished the stabilization and sat back on my heels and thought about what to do with this information. The practical answer was to leave him with basic supplies and coordinates to the nearest medical facility, which was 6 hours away by standard transport. He was stable enough to survive that, probably. He was military trained and clearly possessed a degree of resilience that exceeded baseline expectations. The practical answer was clean and simple and did not complicate anything. I did not use the practical answer. "He comes with us," I said. Voss's shoulders reached 50 degrees. "Personal record. Empress, we do not know. His unit designation is in the Outer Corridor Intelligence Reports," I said. "He is not a threat. He is a soldier who has been keeping himself alive for 3 days on nothing but training and stubbornness, and he is coming with us." Voss looked at the human, then at me. Then she picked up the field kit and said nothing because she had calculated correctly that nothing was her best option. We carried him to the transport. He regained consciousness somewhere over the third ridge and spent the first several minutes of that consciousness trying to assess the situation without revealing that he was assessing it. I watched him do this from the seat across from him. He was good at it. He would have been better if he had not been running a fever. "You're still doing it," I said when he had been awake for approximately 4 minutes. He stopped. "Doing what?" "Evaluating, counting my guards, checking the transport configuration, looking for exits." I met his eyes. "You have been doing it since you woke up. You are very thorough for someone with a fever of nearly 4 degrees above your species' normal range." He looked at me directly for the first time since regaining consciousness. "It's a habit," he said. "I know," I said. "It is a good habit. You can relax it. You are in no danger here." He processed this. "I'm on an unknown transport with an unknown number of armed individuals whose identity and allegiance I haven't confirmed." "You are on my transport," I said, "with my personal guard. My identity is—" "I know who you are," he said. I paused. "The insignia on your guard's armor," he said. "Ethon Imperial designation. And your—" he searched for a word, "your bearing. You move like someone who has never had to consider whether space belongs to them." He paused. "You're Queen Seraphel." I studied him. "You are observant for someone who was unconscious 40 minutes ago." "I'm observant generally," he said. "It's kept me alive." "For 3 days in the Dravon zone with a wound in your side," I said. "Yes, I had gathered that." The fever was making his eyes slightly too bright. He was fighting it with the same focused resistance he had probably applied to everything for the past 3 days. I could see the effort of it, the way he was holding himself precisely upright when his body wanted to do otherwise. "You should sleep," I said. "The medical bay at the palace will address the fever properly, but that is 2 hours away, and you need rest more than you need alertness right now." "I don't sleep on unknown transports," he said. "You were unconscious on an unknown battlefield 40 minutes ago. That was involuntary." "Sleep," I said. "I give you my word that nothing will happen to you on this transport." He looked at me for a long moment. The evaluation in his eyes was different now, less tactical, more something I did not have an immediate category for. "The word of the Queen of the Ethon Empire," he said slowly. "Yes." Another pause. "That's either the most reassuring thing anyone has ever said to me," he said, "or I have a much worse fever than I thought." "Both things can be true," I said. Something happened in his expression. The same quality I had seen in the crater, that particular response to finding humor where it was not expected. It made him look younger and older simultaneously. He slept, not immediately but within a few minutes, with the specific quality of someone who has been refusing to stop for a very long time and has finally been given permission. I watched him sleep for longer than was necessary. Voss, from her position near the transport door, did not say anything. Her shoulders had returned to a neutral angle, which from Voss meant she was thinking rather than objecting. "You were going to tell me this is complicated," I said without looking at her. "I was going to tell you," she said carefully, "that humans have a reputation in the outer corridors for being unexpectedly difficult to categorize." "I know," and that his unit designation suggests a history of operations that would be of significant interest to our intelligence division. "I know that too, and that you have been looking at him since he fell asleep in a way that is not consistent with standard medical concern." I looked at her then. She met my gaze with the steady composure of someone who has earned 11 years of service and intends to use the credibility it provides. "His unit kept a disputed transit corridor open for 7 months last year," I said. 6 people. Against a coordinated blockade operation. They held it with resupply logistics and tactical creativity and no reinforcements because reinforcements would have escalated the situation politically. I paused. I read the report. I remember thinking that whoever commanded that unit understood something about warfare that most generals with 50 times the resources have never grasped. Voss was quiet. "That is him," I said. "That unit. He is the commander." She looked at the sleeping human with a slightly different quality of attention. "That changes the intelligence assessment," she said. "Yes," I said. "It changes several assessments." The palace medical bay confirmed what I had estimated in the field. The wound was serious but cleanly stabilized. The fever was a secondary infection from 3 days of improvised field treatment. Both were addressable. The attending physician, who had treated everything from diplomatic injuries to genuine combat casualties in her 20 years of palace service, gave me a look over her instruments that communicated professional neutrality and personal curiosity in equal measure. "He is strong," she said. "His survival for 3 days in that condition reflects exceptional physical conditioning and—" She paused, consulting her instruments. "A genuinely unusual pain threshold. Will he recover fully?" "Yes, within a week with proper treatment." She looked at me. "He is asking questions." "What kind of questions?" "About the palace layout," she said. Politely. He framed them as general curiosity, but they were systematic. He has asked about 3 specific things that would be relevant if he needed to navigate independently. I considered this. "Tell him what he asks. He is not a prisoner." The physician nodded. Her expression said she had noted that distinction and filed it carefully. I went to the medical bay that evening. He was awake, sitting up against the medical bed with better color than he had possessed 4 hours earlier. The fever had broken. His eyes, clear now, tracked me from the moment I entered with the same quality of attention that seemed to be his default state. "The physician says you have been asking about the palace layout," I said. "Old habit," he said. "I like to know where I am." "You are in the medical bay of the Ethon Imperial Palace," I said. "You are not a prisoner. You are a guest. Those are different things, and I want to be clear about the difference." He studied me. "Why? Why are you a guest rather than a prisoner? Why did you bring me here at all?" he said. "You could have left me with supplies and coordinates. That would have been—" He searched for the right word. "Practical," I said. "Yes." I sat in the chair beside the medical bed. It was not a thing I typically did, sat beside a patient in the medical bay in the informal posture of someone having a conversation rather than conducting an inquiry. I was aware that it was not typical. I did it anyway. "I read a report 14 months ago," I said, "about a transit corridor held by 6 people for 7 months. I have thought about that report several times since reading it because it described a form of tactical thinking I found genuinely interesting. When I turned you over in the crater and found your identification, I recognized the unit designation." He was very still. "You held that corridor," I said. "You and 5 others." "4, he said quietly. "We started with 6. The weight of that correction landed in the silence between us. "I am sorry," I said. He nodded once. A small movement, the kind that acknowledges something without trying to put it away. "It was the right call," he said. "Holding it, even at the cost. The corridor being open prevented a conflict that would have." He stopped. "It was the right call. You do not sound entirely convinced." "I am entirely convinced," he said. "That does not mean it does not cost something to be convinced." I looked at him for a long moment. "That distinction," I said, "is one that most commanders I have encountered in 30 years of governance have not been able to make." "What distinction?" "Between being right and being unaffected by being right." I held his gaze. "Most people collapse those 2 things. They decide that if the decision was correct, then they should not feel the weight of it. You seem to understand that the decision being correct and the weight being real are not contradictory." He was quiet, looking at me with that quality of attention that processed more than it revealed. "You think about military decisions a lot," he said. "For a queen." "I have been at war 3 times, I said. "I think about everything that led to each of those wars and everything that ended them and everything that might have changed the cost if I had decided differently. Yes, I think about it a great deal." "What ended them?" he asked. It was a direct question. Not a diplomatic probe, not a strategic inquiry. Genuine curiosity. "The first one ended because both sides ran out of the specific resource the war was being fought over and realized simultaneously that continuing was pointless. The second ended because a third party mediated an agreement that neither side could have reached directly. The third," I paused. "The third ended because I made a decision that cost me something I could not recover, and it was worth it." He heard the pause. He did not press it. He waited. I had not spoken about the Third War to anyone outside my closest advisors since it concluded. "My sister commanded the fleet engagement that ended it," I said. "She did not survive the engagement. The decision to deploy her unit to that specific position was mine. The outcome—" I stopped. "The outcome was what the strategic analysis said it would be. She understood that when she accepted the deployment. We both understood it. The silence in the medical bay was the kind that follows something real. You were right, he said. Not a question. Not comfort. A statement. Yes, I said. And it costs something. Every day, I said. He nodded. The same small movement as before. He understood that and was not trying to resolve it or diminish it and was not performing understanding. He simply received it. I had sat in this room, in rooms like this one, in the offices and chambers and formal halls of an empire I had governed for 19 years, and spoken about my sister 3 times. To Voss, to my chief advisor, to my own reflection in a window over a battlefield at 3 in the morning. I had just told a human soldier I had known for 6 hours. I did not examine that. Not then. You should sleep, I said. The secondary infection needs another treatment cycle, and the physician will be irritated with me if you are not rested. You don't seem like someone who worries about irritating people, he said. I worry about irritating people who have earned the right to be irritated, I said. She has been keeping my court functioning for 20 years. She has earned considerable latitude. The corner of his mouth moved. That's, he started. Sleep, Captain Cole, I said. Darren, he said. I paused. My name, he said. I know the formal designation is Captain Cole, but he seemed to consider whether to continue. He continued. We seem to be having actual conversations. Actual conversations usually involve names. I looked at him for a moment. Serafel, I said. He nodded. No ceremony. No acknowledgement of what it meant for a queen to offer her given name to a patient in her medical bay. Just a nod, as if it was a natural exchange between 2 people, which was precisely what made it feel like one. Sleep, I said, and left before I said anything else that I would need to think about later. Voss was waiting in the corridor. Empress, she said. I know, I said. The diplomatic implications alone. I know Voss. He is from a species that the Ethon Empire has no formal treaty with. His mission in the Dravon Zone is unconfirmed. His presence here is not yet publicly known. When it becomes publicly known, I know, I said. All of it. I know. Voss was quiet for a moment. Then, in the different voice she used when she had moved from professional concern to something adjacent to personal. Is there anything you do not know, Empress? I thought about that honestly. Whether this is a mistake, I said. She was quiet again. Then, in my experience, the decisions worth examining are the ones we're not certain about. I looked at her. In 11 years, Voss had never said anything like that. You are going to be less useful if you start being encouraging, I said. Then I will return to 45 degrees of disapproval, she said. Good night, Empress. She walked away down the corridor. I stood outside the medical bay for a moment longer than I needed to. Then I went back to my chambers and spent the next several hours reading everything in the intelligence archive about Captain Darren Cole and the Outer Corridor Special Operations Division and the 6 people who had held a transit corridor for 7 months, and the 2 who had not come home. I was not sure what I was looking for. I found more than I expected. He stayed for 7 days. That was the physician's timeline, and he followed it without complaint, which I was told was unusual for patients from military backgrounds. He spent the time when he was not sleeping or in treatment, asking questions about the palace, about the empire, about the Dravon contested zone and its history and the 6-year conflict that had left it the way he had found it. He asked good questions, the kind that suggested he had been thinking carefully about what he did not know rather than asking to fill silence. I visited the medical bay each evening. I told myself it was oversight, and in the sense that I was keeping track of his recovery, it technically was. By the 3rd evening, I had stopped maintaining that particular internal fiction. We talked about the Dravon conflict, and he asked about the political architecture that had created it. I explained the 3-faction resource dispute that had been escalating for 11 years before it broke into open engagement, and he listened with the specific quality of attention that took information in and reorganized it rather than simply storing it. It could have been resolved at year 4, he said when I finished. Yes, I said. The 2nd faction's position was never as strong as they represented it. If the 3rd faction had been brought in as a genuine partner rather than a secondary party at year 4, the resource dispute loses its zero-sum structure and the 1st faction loses the leverage that eventually pushed the 2nd faction toward military response. I looked at him. That is the conclusion my strategic advisory reached 18 months into the conflict. 18 months is a long time. Advisory panels have institutional momentum, I said. They move toward the conclusions their frameworks are built to produce. Reaching a conclusion that requires questioning the framework takes time. You need someone outside the framework, he said. I need several people outside the framework, I said. They are difficult to find because the kind of perspective that is genuinely outside the framework does not typically present itself in the formats that institutional recruitment processes recognize. He was quiet for a moment. Like turning up unconscious in a crater in the Dravon zone, he said. I did not say that. You were thinking it. I held his gaze. I was thinking something adjacent to it. The fifth evening he was sitting in the chair rather than the medical bed when I arrived, which meant the physician had cleared him to be ambulatory, which meant the conversation I had been organizing in my mind for several days had a concrete deadline approaching. You are recovering well, I said. Your physician is exceptionally good at her job, he said. She will be pleased to hear that. She has high standards and low patience for insufficient acknowledgement of them. I sat down. There is something I want to discuss with you before you are formally cleared to leave. He waited. The quality of his waiting was, as I had come to understand over the past 5 days, complete. He did not fill silence with performance. The Dravon Zone conflict has been formally concluded for 4 months, I said. The ceasefire agreement includes a provision for the establishment of a joint oversight committee, which will manage the contested resources during a transitional period. The committee requires a military liaison from each participating faction and a neutral party representative. He was very still. The Human Outer Corridor Operations Division has observer status in the region due to the transit corridor operations conducted by your unit last year. Observer status is technically sufficient to qualify for neutral party representation. You are asking me to serve on a joint oversight committee for a 3-faction conflict resolution in a sector where I was unconscious in a crater 6 days ago, he said. I am noting that the position exists and that you are technically qualified, I said. Those are not the same as asking. No, I said. They are not. I held his gaze. I am asking. He processed this with characteristic thoroughness. Why? Because the committee's primary challenge is not resource allocation, I said. It is getting 3 factions that have been trying to destroy each other for 6 years to sit in a room and make decisions that none of them will like without reverting to the frameworks that created the conflict. That requires someone who can look at a situation from outside the institutional structures of all 3 factions. I paused. It requires someone who thinks the way you think. You have known me for 6 days, he said. I have known the quality of your thinking for 14 months, I said. I read the transit corridor report. I read everything else in the archive about your operations over the past 3 years. The 6 days have been... I stopped. The 6 days have confirmed the assessment. He was quiet, looking at me with those eyes that were taking in everything and revealing what they chose to reveal and nothing else. This is a significant professional commitment, he said. It would require authorization from my command structure, reassignment of mission parameters, a formal request from the Ethon Empire to the Human Outer Corridor Authority. I am aware, I said. I have already drafted the formal request. I wanted to speak with you before submitting it. You drafted the request before asking me. I was fairly confident of the outcome, I said. That is either well-calibrated or presumptuous, he said. Both things can be true, I said. He went still for a moment. Then that quality crossed his face, that particular response to finding something unexpectedly to appreciate. You said that before, he said. In the transport. I say it when it is accurate, I said. He looked at me for a long moment. Outside the medical bay window, the lights of the Imperial City were doing what they always did in the early evening, shifting from the gold of late sun to the cooler silver of the city's own illumination. I had looked at those lights for 19 years. They looked different this evening and I did not examine why. The committee position, he said, yes, would require me to be based in this sector. Yes, in or near the Imperial Palace, given the committee's meeting structure. The formal liaison quarters are attached to the palace complex, I said. Yes, he was quiet. I want to be honest with you, he said, because I think you are someone who prefers honesty to performance, and because this seems like a situation where the difference matters. Yes, I said. I am, and it does. I do not think this is only about the committee, he said. The medical bay was very quiet. No, I said. It is not only about the committee. He absorbed that, took it in and reorganized it the way he reorganized everything. His expression during this process was the most unguarded I had seen it since he had been unconscious in the crater. "I am a captain in the Human Outer Corridor Special Operations Division," he said. "You are the queen of the Ethon Empire." "Yes, those are very different positions." "Yes, this is going to be complicated," he said. "I thought about 17 star systems and 200 warships and 19 years of an empire whose gravity pulled everything toward its center and called that stability. I thought about a 3-day survival in a bombed-out crater. I thought about a transit corridor held for 7 months by 6 people because someone had understood that the mission could not be more important than the people running it. I thought about the specific weight of decisions that are right and still cost something every day. Most things worth doing are," I said. He was quiet for a long moment. "Submit the formal request," he said. I nodded once. "And Serafel," he said. I had not expected him to use my name. The sound of it said simply, without ceremony, the way you say the name of someone you have decided to take seriously, was different from the way anyone else said it. "The committee assignment," he said. "I will do it properly. Whatever it requires, whatever the timeline is, I will do it properly." "I know," I said. "That is why I asked you. But I want you to know," he said, "that I am aware of what else you are asking, and I am saying yes to that too." I held his gaze. "I know," I said. "That is why I told you it was not only about the committee." He nodded. Simple. Direct. No performance. Outside, the Imperial City completed its shift into evening light. I rose from the chair and moved toward the door. "Rest," I said. "The physician will clear you tomorrow. The formal request goes to your command structure in the morning." "Serafel," he said again. I stopped. "Thank you," he said, "for stopping." "In the crater." I was quiet for a moment. "You were alive," I said. "It was not a complicated decision. It was a practical one," he said. "You told Voss it was practical." "I told Voss what she needed to hear," I said. "It was not entirely practical." He did not say anything to that. He did not need to. I left the medical bay. Voss was in the corridor. Her shoulders were at exactly 0 degrees, which was a position I could not recall seeing before. "The formal request drafts are ready," she said. "I prepared them this afternoon." I looked at her. "You prepared them before I told you the outcome of the conversation." "I prepared them," she said carefully, "because regardless of the outcome of the conversation, the committee position exists and requires filling, and Captain Cole is technically qualified, and you have been reading his file for 14 months, and we have had him in the medical bay for 6 days, and you have visited every evening, and some situations do not require formal notification to be clear." I studied her for a long moment. "You prepared them because you knew," I said. "I prepared them," she said, "because after 11 years, when the Empress finds something worth stopping for, I have learned to prepare for what comes next." I was quiet. "Send the requests in the morning," I said. "Yes, Empress." I walked back toward my chambers. The Empire was vast and old and had its own gravity, pulled everything toward the center. It called that gravity stability and called that stability strength. I had governed within it for 19 years. Tonight, walking through the corridors of the palace I had lived in since childhood, I thought about craters and survivors and 7 months and 6 people and 2 who did not come home. I thought about the difference between decisions that are right and the weight of them. I thought about a human soldier who paid attention to everything and performed nothing and said yes the way you say it when you mean all of it. I thought about what it meant to stop. Not every stop is a mistake. Some of them are exactly what they are. The moment the path changes direction and you see the new one clearly for the first time and before you have taken the first step, that this is the direction you were always going to go. I stopped because he was alive. That was true. It was also not the whole truth. The whole truth was something I was going to spend the next considerable portion of my life learning the shape of, in conversations in medical bays and committee sessions and late evenings in the Imperial City light, and in all the complicated, necessary, irreplaceable work of 2 people deciding to take each other seriously. It was going to require a great deal of honesty. I was, for the first time in a long time, entirely ready for that.